The cut above her eyebrow was barely visible under the makeup, but Jae-won Park noticed it the second Naomi Carter walked through his door. For 8 months, she'd been a ghost in his penthouse, arriving every Tuesday and Friday at precisely 3 p.m., cleaning his Los Angeles high-rise while he was supposedly at business meetings. Except today, Jae-won had cancelled those meetings. Today, something had told him to stay home, and now he understood why. The woman who moved through his space with practiced silence, who never met his eyes, who made herself smaller in his presence, had a fresh wound on her face and a shadow of fear in her expression that made his blood run cold. Naomi hadn't expected him to be there. In 8 months of working for Elite Cleaning Solutions, she'd perfected her schedule around his absence. Mr. Park was never home on Friday afternoons. He was always downtown, managing whatever empire he'd built in the shadows of Koreatown. The other cleaners whispered about him, about the restaurants he owned, about the men in expensive suits who visited late at night, about how his name carried weight in certain circles where power wasn't discussed, only understood. Naomi didn't care about any of that. She cared about the $425 weekly paycheck that kept her daughter Imani fed, and their studio apartment barely affordable in a neighborhood where gunshots were background noise. She'd covered the cut as best she could, 3 layers of concealer that didn't quite match her dark skin, foundation borrowed from a co-worker, a careful arrangement of her hair to hide the worst of the swelling. Her supervisor would send her home if she looked damaged, and going home meant no pay. Imani needed new winter clothes. The electricity bill was overdue by 2 weeks, so Naomi had swallowed the pain, covered the evidence, and shown up to work like nothing had happened, like her world hadn't splintered apart again last night. The penthouse was silent when she arrived, the floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Los Angeles stretching endlessly below, a city of dreams that had given her nothing but nightmares. She moved through the massive living room, her footsteps muffled on imported marble past furniture that cost more than she'd make in 5 years. She was dusting the shelves lined with books in Korean and English, untouched and pristine like everything else in Jae-won Park's carefully controlled world, when she heard his voice behind her. "You're early." The words were quiet, his accent softening the consonants, making even a simple observation sound deliberate. Naomi turned slowly. Keeping her face angled away from the light, she knew exactly what time it was, 3 p.m., exactly on schedule. He was the one breaking pattern. "I'm right on time, Mr. Park," she said softly, her eyes fixed on the cleaning caddy at her feet. "I can come back later if you need privacy." The air shifted, and suddenly he was closer, not threatening, but present in a way he'd never been before. In 8 months, they'd exchanged maybe 20 words total. Now he was standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated, bergamot and cedar. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. Jae-won Park didn't make requests. He made statements, gave orders, expected compliance. Naomi had learned that much about him from observation, from watching how others deferred to him, how his voice carried authority that didn't need volume. She raised her eyes slowly, watched his expression shift from distant professionalism to something sharp and focused and almost angry. He saw it immediately. The cut, the bruise beneath the makeup, the way she held herself like someone bracing for another blow. Jae-won's jaw tightened, and when he spoke again, his voice had dropped to something deadly quiet. "What happened to your face?" "I fell," Naomi said automatically, the lie she'd practiced in the mirror that morning. "It's nothing. Really, just clumsy." His eyes narrowed, and she watched him process the lie, dissect it, reject it entirely. He took 1 step closer, and she took 1 step back, a reflexive retreat that she couldn't control. That small movement, that instinctive flinch, made something dangerous flicker across his face. "You fell," he repeated, each word weighted with disbelief. His eyes dropped to her wrists, to where the long sleeves of her uniform didn't quite cover the bruises shaped like fingerprints. "And your arms? You fell on those too?" Naomi's throat tightened. She pulled her sleeves down, tried to create distance, but the bookshelf was behind her, and he was in front of her, and suddenly the massive penthouse felt too small. "Mr. Park, with respect, I really need to finish my work. I have 3 more houses today." She tried to move past him, but he shifted slightly, not blocking her exactly, but making it clear the conversation wasn't over. Jae-won's hand lifted toward her face, then stopped mid-air, hovering, asking permission he probably wasn't used to needing. "Sit down," he said quietly. please. The please unraveled something in her chest. Naomi perched on the edge of his pristine white sofa, wrong in every possible way. Her discount uniform, her worn sneakers, her damaged face in his perfect space. She didn't belong here, had never belonged here, but he was looking at her like she mattered, like she was more than invisible labor. Jae-won stood before her, hands in his pockets, studying her with an intensity that made her skin warm despite her fear. Tell me his name. It wasn't a question. There's no name to tell, Naomi whispered, but her voice betrayed her, shaking on the words. He crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level, and up close, he was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, black hair styled with casual perfection. The top 2 buttons of his white shirt were undone, revealing collarbones and the edge of a tattoo that disappeared beneath the fabric. I've built my entire life on reading people, Naomi. The way he said her name, careful and precise, made her realize he'd never used it before. 8 months of invisibility, shattered in a single moment. You're terrified. That cut is fresh. Maybe 12 hours old. Someone hurt you, and recently, was it a boyfriend? No. The word came out too fast. Husband? No. Then who? His voice dropped even lower, something protective and violent simmering beneath the calm surface. Why do you even care? The question burst out of her before she could stop it. I'm just someone who cleans your home. You don't know me. Something flickered across his face, surprise mixed with what looked like hurt. You think that's all you are to me? He asked quietly. Isn't it? Jae-won was silent for a long moment, and then he did something that shocked her. He sat down on the floor in front of her, completely informal, abandoning every trace of the powerful businessman persona. I notice everything in my space. Naomi, 8 months ago, you started bringing flowers, cheap grocery store flowers that you arrange in my kitchen when you think I won't notice. You reorganize my books by color instead of how I had them, because you think it looks better. You open the windows exactly 4 inches because somehow you figured out I like fresh air, but hate when papers blow around. Her breath caught. She thought herself invisible, thought her small touches went unnoticed. You hum when you work, he continued, his voice softer now. Old R&B songs. Your mother's favorites, I think. Because sometimes you sing words about going home to Georgia. You're not just someone who cleans my home. You're the only real thing in this apartment. You're the only person who treats this space like it could be a home instead of just a showpiece. Naomi couldn't breathe. Mr. Park, the name, he interrupted gently but firmly. Give me the name of whoever did this to you. I can't, Naomi whispered, pulling her hands into her lap, trying to make herself smaller again. But Jae-won wasn't letting her disappear this time. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she didn't, his fingers wrapped gently around her wrist, the one without bruises, warm and steady. Can't or won't? He asked, his thumb brushing over her pulse point. Both. She tried to stand, but his touch anchored her, not forceful, just present. Mr. Park, I really should go. I have schedules to keep. And this isn't... If you leave right now, he interrupted quietly, you're walking away from the only protection I can offer you. Whoever hurt you will do it again. They always do. The certainty in his voice sent chills down her spine. Your protection. She almost laughed, except nothing about this was funny. You don't even know me. You don't know what happened or why or... I know you have a daughter, he said, and her blood went cold. 6 years old, I think. I know you work 4 different houses every day to afford an apartment in a neighborhood that terrifies you. I know you're stronger than anyone I've ever met, and I know... He stopped, his jaw tightening. I know I won't let anyone hurt you again. The elevator chimed, destroying the moment. Jae-won's expression shifted instantly, the vulnerability vanishing behind cold authority. A young Korean man emerged, starting to speak rapidly in his native language, but stopped when he saw Naomi. Jae-won stood smoothly, responded in Korean with a tone that made the man bow and retreat immediately. When he turned back to Naomi, some of the softness had returned to his face. Have dinner with me, he said. Tonight, let me hear what happened. Let me help. I can't accept your help, Naomi said, standing now, grabbing her cleaning supplies like a shield. Why? Because you're Kang Jae-won Park. She gestured around the penthouse at the obvious wealth, at the evidence of a life so far removed from hers, it might as well be a different planet. And I'm nobody. His hand caught her arm gently as she tried to move past him. You're wrong, he said, his voice low and intense. You're the first person I've wanted to actually know in 16 years. Naomi's phone buzzed. Imani's daycare. She pulled away, answered, confirmed pickup time, hung up with shaking hands. I have to go, she said, and this time he let her, but she felt his eyes on her during the entire elevator descent, heavy and searching and impossibly dangerous. That night, lying in the narrow bed she shared with Imani in their cramped studio, Naomi touched the cut on her face and wondered what it meant that Jae-won Park had looked at her like she was visible, like she mattered, like she was something more than just the help. 5 days passed before Naomi returned to the penthouse. She'd called in sick for her Tuesday shift, couldn't face him, couldn't face the questions she knew he'd ask. But bills didn't pause for emotional turmoil, and Friday came whether she was ready or not. She expected him to be gone, back to his normal schedule. Instead, she found him sitting at his dining table, paperwork spread before him, waiting. "How you came?" he said, and he sounded relieved, almost surprised. "It's my job. It's Friday at 3 p.m., he corrected. "Sit with me for a minute." "Mr. Park, Jae-won," he interrupted gently. "If we're going to have this conversation, use my name." Something about the request felt intimate, like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. Naomi set down her cleaning supplies and sat, maintaining careful distance. He pushed a cup of tea toward her, something fragrant and expensive, steam rising in delicate curls. "I had someone look into your situation," he said quietly, and Naomi's entire body went rigid. "What?" "Discreetly," he added quickly, raising a hand before she could protest. "No one knows," I asked. "But Naomi, if someone's threatening you, I have resources that can—" "No," she stood abruptly. "You can't do whatever you're thinking. You can't just fix my life like it's one of your business problems." "Why not?" His eyes flashed with something intense. "You're working yourself into exhaustion. Someone put their hands on you. That makes it my problem now." "Why?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Why do you care? We've barely spoken. You don't know anything about me, about my life, about—" "Then tell me," he said, standing now, rounding the table until they were face to face. "Tell me everything. Let me understand. Let me help." His hand lifted to her face again, that same hovering gesture, asking permission. "Let me in." This time, Naomi didn't pull away. His fingers brushed her cheek, feather-light, tracing the edge of the healing cut with devastating gentleness. The touch was so careful, it hurt more than the original blow. "His name is Darius," she heard herself whisper. "My ex, Imani's father. He left when I was 7 months pregnant, said he wasn't ready for a kid, that I'd trapped him. Disappeared for 6 years. Then 2 weeks ago, he showed up demanding money, saying I owed him for his DNA, for giving me a child." Jae-won's hand stilled against her cheek. "Where is he now?" The protective fury in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. "Safe. I don't know. He keeps showing up randomly. Says he knows where Imani goes to daycare. Knows our schedule. Knows—" Her voice cracked. He implied things about accidents, about how easy it would be to— She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the threats that had kept her up for 13 straight nights. Jae-won's jaw clenched, and he pulled out his phone, typed rapidly in Korean, then pocketed it. "That threat ends today," he said firmly. "What are you—" "I'm handling it," he interrupted. "Darius will forget you exist by tomorrow. You and Imani will be safe. You can't just—" Naomi grabbed his arm, felt the muscle tense beneath her fingers. "Jae-won, whatever you're thinking, don't— I won't have violence on my conscience." "There won't be violence," he said, his hand covering hers. "There will be a conversation, the kind of conversation men like Darius understand. He'll realize that pursuing you comes with consequences he's not prepared to face." "I don't want your help," Naomi said, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Too bad," Jae-won replied, pulling her incrementally closer. "You have it anyway." Suddenly they were breathing the same air, occupying the same impossible space, his hand still covering hers, her fingers still wrapped around his forearm. "I'm done pretending you're invisible. I'm done pretending I don't count down the hours until Friday at 3 p.m. Until you walk through that door and make this place feel less empty." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "This is insane. You're you, and you're the woman I think about when I should be thinking about business deals," he interrupted, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. "You're the reason I started canceling Friday meetings. You're the only genuine thing in my life, Naomi. Everything else is transactions and power plays and people wanting something from me. But you You just bring flowers and hum old songs and make my space feel human. You barely know me, she protested weakly. Then let me know you, he said, bending slightly so their faces were level. Really know you, have dinner with me. A real dinner, not me ambushing you while you're trying to work. Tomorrow night. I have Imani, Naomi said automatically. I can't just... Bring her, Jae-won said, and the words shocked her into silence. What? Bring your daughter, he repeated. I want to meet everyone who matters to you. I want to understand what makes you hum those songs, what makes you smile. What? He stopped, something vulnerable crossing his features. I want to matter to you the way you've started to matter to me. The elevator chimed again, and another man emerged, older this time. Speaking urgently in Korean, Jae-won responded with sharp words that made the man's face go pale before he retreated. I have to handle something, Jae-won said, turning back to Naomi, frustration evident in the set of his shoulders. But tomorrow, dinner, my restaurant in Koreatown, Seolung, 7 o'clock. I'll send a car. I can't afford, Naomi started, but he pressed a finger gently to her lips, silencing her. You're not paying. You're my guest. He lifted her hand to his mouth, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing through her entire body. Say yes, Naomi. Let me show you what it feels like to be seen. She should say no, should maintain the careful boundaries between their worlds, should protect herself and Imani from the dangerous orbit of Jae-won Park. But when he looked at her like she was rare and precious, when his touch made her feel cherished instead of invisible, when his voice wrapped around her name like a promise, the words slipped out before she could stop it. Yes. His smile transformed his entire face, made him look younger, almost vulnerable. Tomorrow, then. He was gone before she could change her mind, leaving her standing in his perfect penthouse, hands still tingling from his kiss, heart racing with equal parts terror and anticipation. That night, Imani asked why Mommy was smiling at her phone. Naomi told her they were going somewhere special tomorrow. She didn't mention the man with dangerous eyes, who'd somehow seen through her invisibility and decided she was worth protecting. She didn't mention that every instinct screamed this would end in disaster. She especially didn't mention that for the first time in 6 years, disaster seemed like a risk worth taking. Seolung occupied a corner in Koreatown that whispered old money and older secrets. Naomi stood outside with Imani, both wearing their church clothes, which still looked shabby against the restaurant's elegant facade. Mama, are we really allowed? Imani tugged at her dress, a hand-me-down that Naomi had carefully altered to fit. We were invited, baby, Naomi said, squeezing her daughter's hand, fighting her own doubts. The door opened before they could knock, a hostess in traditional hanbok bowing slightly. Ms. Carter, Mr. Park is waiting. They were led through the main dining room, all intimate lighting and well-dressed patrons, to a private room in the back. Jae-won stood when they entered, and Naomi's breath caught. He wore black slacks and a charcoal shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with subtle tattoos, casual elegance that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. Naomi, his eyes swept over her, warm and genuine. Gomes, you look beautiful, she flushed, suddenly conscious of her department store dress. I look beautiful, he repeated firmly, then crouched to Imani's level. And you must be Imani. Your mom told me about you. Imani's eyes went wide. She did. Constantly, Jae-won said with a smile. She says you're the smartest kid in 1st grade. Kindergarten, Imani corrected solemnly. Guy, but I can read chapter books. Then you and I will get along perfectly, Jae-won said. I collect books. What kinds of stories do you like? And just like that, Imani was chattering about princesses and dragons while Jae-won listened with apparent fascination, asking questions, engaging with her daughter like she was a person worth knowing. Naomi watched them, her heart doing something complicated in her chest, simultaneously breaking and mending at how natural he was with Imani. Dinner was a revelation, course after course of Korean dishes Naomi had never tried, each explained patiently by Jae-won. He taught Imani how to use chopsticks, laughing when she dropped rice repeatedly, never showing even a hint of impatience. He told stories about growing up in Seoul, about his grandmother who raised him to appreciate good food and strong women. "So my grandmother would have liked you," he said to Naomi, refilling her tea with practiced grace. "She always said the strongest people are the ones who protect others before protecting themselves." "I'm not that strong," Naomi protested. "You're raising an incredible daughter alone while working multiple jobs and facing down a man who threatened what you love most," Jae-won said, his eyes holding hers. "Naomi, you're the strongest person I've ever met." Imani excused herself to the bathroom, leaving them alone for the first time all evening. The air immediately shifted, tension crackling between them. "Thank you," Naomi said softly, "for this, for being kind to Imani, for—" "I'm not being kind," Jae-won interrupted, leaning forward. "I'm being honest. She's incredible because you're incredible." His hand found hers across the table. "I meant what I said yesterday, about wanting to know you, about you mattering. This isn't charity or some rescue fantasy. This is me being selfish because you make me feel human again. Before you decide how you feel about what happens next in this story, I want to ask you something real. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever met someone who made you feel seen for the first time, drop a comment and tell me about it. Who was that person for you? And if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button because, trust me, what's coming next is going to surprise you even more than it surprised Naomi." Naomi turned her hand over, lacing their fingers together, feeling the calluses on his palms that spoke of a past he hadn't shared yet. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of you, of what you make me feel, of what happens when reality crashes in." "Reality is already here," Jae-won said, his thumb stroking her palm. "I'm Kang Jae-won Park. You've heard the stories? The whispers about what I do, who I am? I won't lie to you about my world. It's complicated and sometimes dangerous and definitely not clean. But Naomi," his voice dropped lower, "when I look at you, I see someone who makes me want to be better than what I've become." "Jae-won," Naomi started, but Imani burst back in, destroying the moment, but also saving her from having to respond to the intensity of his confession. Jae-won didn't let go of her hand, though, and when Imani noticed, she grinned like she'd discovered a wonderful secret. They stayed for 2 more hours. Jae-won ordered dessert, bingsu that made Imani's eyes light up, and told more stories. He asked about Naomi's childhood in Georgia, listened to her talk about her grandmother's peach cobbler, her abandoned dreams of maybe becoming a teacher someday. "Not abandoned," he said thoughtfully. "Delayed. Dreams don't die. They just wait for the right moment." The drive home was in Jae-won's car, a sleek black sedan driven by a silent driver who somehow seemed both present and invisible. Imani fell asleep against Naomi's shoulder, full and content in a way that made Naomi's throat tight. "She likes you," Naomi murmured, stroking her daughter's hair. "Good," Jae-won said, shifting closer in the back seat, "because I plan on being around a lot more. If you'll let me." "This is crazy," Naomi whispered. "Maybe," he agreed, his hand cupping her face, thumb brushing over where the cut had been. It was healing now, fading to yellow-green. "But I'm done pretending I don't want this. Want you. People will talk," Naomi said quietly, hyper-aware of how close he was, how natural this felt, despite how impossible it was. "Your world and mine, they don't—" "My world is whatever I say it is," Jae-won interrupted, his voice fierce. "And I say you belong in it." The car stopped outside her apartment building, a rundown complex in a neighborhood that made Jae-won's jaw tighten visibly. He helped her extract sleepy Imani, then walked them to the door, despite Naomi's protests about safety, about him being seen here. At her doorway, with Imani drowsy against her shoulder, he looked at her with an intensity that stole her breath. "Tomorrow," he said, "come to the penthouse. Not to work, to see me." Jae-won, but he kissed her before she could protest, soft and searching, a question more than a demand. Naomi's free hand fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed warnings about consequences and complications. He tasted like possibility and danger, like everything she'd trained herself not to want. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. "Tomorrow," he repeated. "Tomorrow," she agreed, watching him disappear into the night, taking her common sense with him. Tomorrow came with chaos. Naomi was getting Imani ready for daycare when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Miss Carter," a woman's voice, professional and cold. "This is Detective Morrison, LAPD. We need to talk about Darius Williams." Naomi's blood turned to ice. "Sars, what about him?" "He's filed a complaint alleging harassment and intimidation from parties connected to you. He's also claiming you've made false accusations of domestic violence and are trying to keep him from his daughter." The floor tilted beneath her feet. "That's not... I never filed anything about violence. I never tried to... We need you to come to the station today, Miss Carter, to discuss these allegations. Naomi's mind raced. She'd told Jae-won about Darius. Jae-won had made calls, had promised to handle it. Oh God, what had he done? She dropped Imani at daycare with shaking hands and went straight to the penthouse, bypassing her scheduled day entirely. Jae-won answered the private elevator in workout clothes, hair damp with sweat, looking gorgeous and completely unconcerned. Naomi, I wasn't expecting you until... He stopped, seeing her face. What's wrong? What did you do? Her voice shook with barely contained panic. The police called. Darius is claiming harassment, claiming I'm lying about everything. What did you do? Jae-won's expression shuttered immediately, concern vanishing behind cold calculation. I had a conversation with him, like I said I would. What kind of conversation? Naomi's voice rose. Because now he's lying to the police about me, and I could... She couldn't breathe. Sign I could lose Imani. If Child Services thinks I'm connected to whatever you did, if they think I'm involved with... Understanding dawned on his face, followed quickly by something that looked like horror. Naomi, no, that won't happen. I made sure nothing could trace back to you. I have people who can... You have people, Naomi repeated, stepping back from him. You have people who can make things disappear, who can threaten my ex, who can... She laughed, a bitter sound. Jae-won, I can't be involved in whatever criminal network you're part of. I have a daughter. If I lose her because of your help, you won't lose her, he said firmly, approaching her carefully, like she was something fragile that might shatter. I swear to you that complaint won't stick. I'll make sure... Stop making sure. The words exploded out of her. Stop fixing my problems with whatever illegal connections you have. I didn't ask for your protection. I didn't ask for you to threaten people on my behalf. I just... Her voice cracked. I just wanted someone to see me, not someone to try to save me like I'm some damsel in distress. Jae-won flinched like she'd struck him. That's not what this is. No. Naomi's hands were shaking. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're playing hero while I'm the one who has to face the consequences. You get to make calls and pull strings, but I'm the one whose daughter could get taken away. You have me, Jae-won said intensely, grabbing her shoulders. You have my protection, my resources, everything I can. I don't want them, the admission tore out of her. I want my simple life where I know the rules, where I clean houses and raise my daughter and stay invisible because invisible is safe. Invisible means nobody looks too close at my finances or my living situation or whether I'm fit to be a mother. Invisible is dying slowly, Jae-won said, his grip tightening. You think I don't see what that life costs you? You're drowning, Naomi. I'm trying to throw you a rope. I don't want your rope, Naomi said, but her voice cracked on the words. I want... She stopped, realizing what she was about to say, but it was too late. I want to not be terrified that loving you will destroy everything I've built. The silence that followed was deafening. Naomi watched Jae-won's face transform, shock giving way to something raw and vulnerable. You love me, he whispered. She tried to take it back, couldn't. It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters, he said, pulling her close. She went, despite everything, burrowing into his chest like she could hide from reality there. Naomi, I will fix this. The police situation, Darius, all of it, it'll disappear. I swear on everything I am. That's what I'm afraid of, she whispered against his shirt. Everything you are includes things I can't be part of, things that could destroy me and Imani. His arms tightened around her. Then I'll change. I'll step back from... You can't change what you are, Naomi interrupted, pulling away to look at him. You're Jae-won Park. You have responsibilities, people depending on you, a whole world I don't understand and can't be part of. So help me understand yours, he pleaded. Let me in completely. Let me... Her phone rang. Detective Morrison again. Naomi answered with shaking hands, and Jae-won's expression hardened at whatever he heard in her voice during the brief conversation. When she hung up, he was already making calls in Korean, his tone sharp and commanding, transforming into someone she didn't recognize. Within 30 minutes, he'd arranged a lawyer to meet her at the station, someone to pick up Imani from daycare, and apparently had Darius's complaint in the process of vanishing. It's handled, he said finally, pocketing his phone. Naomi stared at this man who could reshape reality with phone calls, who looked at her like she was precious, who'd somehow become essential to her happiness in just weeks. I need time, she said quietly, to think, to figure out if I can do this, if I'm strong enough for your world. Pain flashed across his face, quickly suppressed. How much time? I don't know. Naomi, please. But she was already backing toward the elevator. Just, please. She left him standing in his perfect penthouse, looking lost for the first time since she'd met him. The elevator descent felt like falling, and Naomi wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or if the biggest mistake was falling in love with Jae-won Park in the first place. 6 days of silence. Jae-won didn't call, didn't text, gave her the space she'd demanded. Naomi should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt hollow, like someone had carved out something essential and left her empty. She went through motions, work and Imani and sleep and repeat. The police complaint had vanished like Jae-won promised, Darius apparently deciding to drop everything and leave town according to a terse text she'd received. She should have been grateful. She was mostly terrified of how easily he'd made her problems disappear, of what that power meant, of what it said about the world he inhabited. On the 7th day, Imani asked why they weren't seeing Mr. Park anymore. "It's complicated, baby," Naomi said, folding laundry in their cramped studio, avoiding her daughter's too perceptive gaze. "Do you miss him?" Imani asked, clutching the stuffed rabbit Jae-won had somehow arranged to be delivered 2 days ago. Anonymous, except Naomi knew exactly who'd sent it. "Yes," Naomi admitted, because lying to her daughter had never been an option. "Then why don't we see him?" Imani climbed into her lap. 6 years old, but wise beyond her years. "Is it because he has money and we don't? Like how the kids at school say we're different?" Naomi's heart shattered. "It's because his life is very different from ours, and sometimes different worlds don't fit together easily." "He made you smile, Mama," Imani said softly, her small hand patting Naomi's cheek. "You don't smile much anymore. I liked when you smiled." That night, after Imani fell asleep, Naomi couldn't stop thinking about Jae-won's hands on her face. His fierce protectiveness, the way he'd crouched to Imani's level and listened like her words mattered, the way he'd kissed her like she was everything. Her phone buzzed at 1 in the morning. "Jae-won, I miss you. Tell me how to fix this." She stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Tell him it's impossible. Tell him they're from different worlds. Tell him she's not strong enough for his life. Tell him she loves him anyway. Before she could respond, someone pounded on her door. Naomi's heart seized. Late-night knocks meant trouble, always had. She grabbed her phone, ready to call 911, and peered through the peephole. Jae-won stood there in rumpled clothes, hair disheveled, looking nothing like the controlled businessman and everything like a man barely holding himself together. She opened the door. "What are you—" "I can't do this," he said, pushing inside, pacing her tiny living room like something caged and desperate. 6 days, Naomi. 6 days of pretending I can function without you. I can't. Jae-won, it's 1 in the morning. Imani's sleeping in the next room. I'll be quiet, he said, but he wasn't quiet at all. I've spent 16 years building an empire, 16 years making myself untouchable, unreachable. Then you walk into my life humming old songs and arranging cheap flowers, and suddenly everything I built feels meaningless. You barely know me, Naomi protested, but the words felt hollow. I know everything that matters, he said, crossing to her in 2 strides. I know you sacrifice so your daughter can have better. I know you see good in people who don't deserve it. I know you think you're invisible, but Naomi, he cupped her face in both hands. You're the most visible thing in my world. When you're not there, everything goes grey. The penthouse is just empty space. The flowers you brought are dying. Even my books look wrong because you're not there to reorganize them. Tears burned her eyes. I'm scared. So am I, he admitted, his forehead touching hers. Terrified, because you've become my weakness, and in my world, weakness gets exploited, gets you killed, but I don't care anymore. I'd rather die vulnerable with you than live another 16 years safe and alone. Your world, Naomi started, but he interrupted. My world can adjust, will adjust. I don't care what people think, what complications arise. I'm black, Jae-won. You're Korean, she said quietly. That matters to people, to society, to anyone in your organization who... Anyone who has a problem with us has a problem with me, he said, his voice turning to ice. Fayad's problems with me don't last long. I won't apologize for that. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. I'm not yours, she whispered, but without conviction. Aren't you? He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes held everything raw and exposed. Because I'm completely yours. Every dark, complicated part of me belongs to you now. I know that's not fair. I know I'm dragging you into something messy and dangerous. But Naomi, his voice cracked. I can't lose you. I won't survive it. Jae-won, I love you, he said desperately. I love that you're strong when the world tries to break you. I love that you make me want to be better than what I've become. I love how you love your daughter. I love your cheap grocery store flowers and your off-key humming and how you reorganize everything by color because you think it looks better. They do look better by color, she whispered, crying now. They do, he agreed, wiping her tears with his thumbs. Everything looks better when you're in it. My apartment, my life, me, I'm better when you're there. What if it's not enough? Naomi asked, her hands clutching his shirt. What if the differences between us are too much? Then we'll fight for it together, he said fiercely. I'll leave my world if you ask. I'll walk away from everything if it means... No, she interrupted. I won't ask you to give up who you are. I won't ask you to become someone else for me. Then what do you want? His question hung between them, desperate and hoping. Naomi looked at this powerful man, reduced to vulnerability in her cramped apartment, asking her to save him the way he tried to save her. She thought about Imani saying she didn't smile anymore, about how invisible she'd felt before Jae-won looked at her like she was real, about how love was always a risk, but some risks were worth taking. I want you, she whispered. All of you. The complicated parts, the scary parts, the parts you think I can't handle. She grabbed his shirt, pulled him closer. I want you to teach me Korean. I want to learn about your world while you learn about mine. I want... He kissed her, deep and claiming, lifting her off the ground as she wrapped around him, surrendering to this impossible, terrifying thing between them. They broke apart, breathless, and she continued. I want you to meet my family in Georgia. I want Imani to have someone who shows up, who stays. I want to wake up next to you and not feel like I'm trespassing. You're not trespassing, he said softly. You're home. My penthouse is home now because you're in it. I'm home because you see me as more than just what I do, more than the power and the reputation. Their moment was interrupted by a small voice at the doorway. Mama, why is Mr. Park here? Imani stood there in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, clutching the stuffed rabbit he'd sent. Naomi pulled away instinctively, but Jae-won immediately crouched to Imani's level, the shift from desperate lover to gentle adult, seamless and startling. I came to ask your mum something important, he said softly. But I should ask you too. He held out his hand and Imani walked closer, curiosity overcoming sleepiness. Would it be okay if I spent more time with you and your mum? If I became part of your family? Imani studied him with serious, 6-year-old eyes that had seen too much already. Will you make Mama smile again? She asked quietly. Every day, he answered without hesitation. Will you read me stories and teach me Korean words and not get mad if I ask too many questions? I would love that, he said, a real smile breaking across his face. She hesitated, then asked the question that lived like a bruise in her chest. Will you stay? My dad left. Grown-ups always say they'll stay, but then they go away. Something in Jae-won's expression broke. I'm not leaving, he said, voice rough. Not ever. I promise you both. You're my family now. And I protect my family. Imani threw her arms around his neck, and he stood, lifting her easily, reaching for Naomi with his free arm. For a long moment, the three of them stood there in the tiny living room, an unlikely constellation of a Korean Mafia boss, a black single mother, and a little girl who'd learned not to trust promises. Naomi pressed her face against his shoulder. I love you, she whispered, the words finally free of fear. I love you both, he whispered back, one arm holding Imani, the other wrapped around Naomi. You're my whole world now. For the first time in years, Naomi didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was home. Years later, Naomi stood in front of floor-to-ceiling windows, arranging flowers in a glass vase. Not cheap grocery store flowers anymore, but she still bought them herself, still insisted on the ritual of color and texture, and life brightening the penthouse. Their penthouse now, Los Angeles glittered beneath them, familiar instead of intimidating. Behind her, she felt a gaze she knew better than her own reflection. You're staring, she said without turning, a smile tugging at her mouth. Can't help it, Jae-won answered from the kitchen doorway, coffee in hand. You're beautiful when you concentrate. She turned then, taking him in. His shirt hung open at the collar, revealing the tattoos over his chest that now included her name in Korean characters, inked over his heart, and Imani's right below it. Naomi wore one of his shirts from yesterday, bare legs brushing cool hardwood, completely at ease in a space that had once made her feel small and out of place. Imani called, she said, and her voice trembled with pride. She got into UCLA, full scholarship. Of course she did, Jae-won said, crossing the room to pull her into his arms. She's brilliant. Like her mother. She laughed softly. Her father helped. It was true. With his backing, but on her terms, Naomi had built her own cleaning company, one that paid fair wages, offered real benefits, and treated workers with dignity. What started with one extra client had grown into a business other companies tried to copy, and she ran it herself. Jae-won provided capital and connections, but he never took over. He'd learned to offer support instead of control, to ask instead of decide. I just wrote checks, he said now. You were the one who had the vision. A knock sounded at the door, and he tensed automatically. Old instincts hard to kill, but relaxed when familiar voices floated down the hallway. His closest friends, once lieutenants, now legitimate business partners, arrived with takeout and loud laughter, quickly claimed by Imani, home from classes with friends of her own. Naomi's grandmother had flown in from Georgia, filling the kitchen with the smell of peach cobbler, collard greens, and stories in a soft southern drawl. The apartment filled with English and Korean, with code switching and jokes, with the chaos of a blended family that had somehow made a life at the intersection of two cultures and two very different pasts. Jae-won had stepped back from the shadows. The restaurants were legitimate now, the money clean, the risks smaller. The transition had been rough, but Naomi had been by his side through every sleepless night and hard decision. Later, after everyone left and the dishwasher hummed softly in the background, Naomi stood on the balcony, looking out over the city that had once made her feel invisible. Jae-won stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, breathing her in like she was his favorite place. Regrets? He asked, his voice low. About us? She leaned back into him, feeling his heartbeat against her spine. Never, she said. You. Only that I didn't notice that cut on your face the very first day you walked into my life, he answered quietly. That I wasted 8 months pretending you were invisible when you were the only thing worth seeing. Naomi turned in his arms, cupping his face, tracing the laugh lines that hadn't been there when they met. I'll see me now, she said. Every day for the rest of my life. He kissed her softly, reverently. My impossible, stubborn, flower-obsessed wife. Your book reorganizing, schedule-obsessed, still learning Korean wife, she corrected, laughing. My family, and he said simply, completely, perfectly mine. In the city where she'd once felt like a shadow, Naomi Carter Park had never felt more seen, more loved, or more at home. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt invisible and then met someone who made you feel seen, consider joining this community in a deeper way. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that love can show up in the most unexpected places. And in the comments, tell your story. A moment when someone surprised you with kindness, or a time your life changed because someone finally noticed you. Your voice matters here. And this space is for all of us who are learning that we deserve to be seen.